There. So, by the time I put this video up online, we have 2 weeks until Friendship is Magic, the 4th generation of My Little Pony, comes to an end. And I figured maybe, just maybe, this would possibly be a good time that I talked about sort of how I became a part of the fandom and my experience with it from these 9 years that the show was on the air, but the 7 years, beginning in 2012, that I became a part of the fandom. Pretty much with 2010, I mean, October 10th, 2010, the day that the Hub, which is now Discovery Family, launched. It had loads of contents, both old and new. MLP started at that time, but with the whole, like, male, female, like, blue-pink, like, I never paid much attention to the MLP stuff airing. And besides that, the only fraction amount of My Little Pony that I knew about around that time was only through, like, the childhood-ish little toys that were in, like, the daycare, kindergarten, or whatever. But I knew this much about Friendship is Magic. Mainly for the Hub, I watched it particularly for the original 1960s campy Batman series, if you remember that one with Adam West and Burt Ward, and it's just how charming and fun, and, well, the show's out on DVD, but I don't need to say that. The other one wouldn't come out till like a couple of months after that network launched. It was called Dan Versus. Probably I watched that one next to the campy Batman almost, I wouldn't say religiously, but I liked it. I mean, Dan Versus, I wish the show had more seasons, but something happened internally, and sadly, it just never came to be. And that's sometimes the sad part with TV shows, because Dan Versus, pretty funny. But back onto the topic. I mean, like 2010, 2011, that's pretty much what I sort of call my modest time that I've watched the Hub. But again, like, at that time the Hub was more full of some new stuff, but they also had some of the old shows on there, like I've mentioned. They started acquiring Animaniacs and Goosebumps and all that. But when it came to the ponies, here's where the story begins, like how I became a part of the fandom. So, the story kind of begins as Act 1, September 2011. While outside in the lunch hall, it kind of began 2011. It was lunch period, and me and a few of the friends were outside eating lunch, and a student that was in a class that I was in last year had the same lunch period as I did. They kind of were just there at our table. We weren't biased or anything. We allowed anyone to sit there. We weren't like these high school stereotypes only. We allowed anyone to sit. Me and the extra friend that's like a grade ahead of me that I knew since middle school. But anyways, the student that was the same grade as I was essentially was at our table, and then he recommended that I watch this show, My Little Pony Friendship is Magic, which, again, I knew very little about that show, but kind of at that time I decided to give it a watch anyways. I mean, I have a free weekend somewhere in there where I'm not working on an episode of a review series that I did way back when in high school, and may not be at this moment considering of rebooting the series sometime for another source or whatever. Back to the topic. When it came down to this show, particularly the one that I fully watched, was an episode, basically the half of Return of Harmony. So at that Saturday, I tuned into the hub, woke up that Saturday morning, flipped it over there. It was playing Part 2, Return of Harmony. Seeing Part 2 at first confused me a bit, but I kind of looked online, found the first part on the hub's website, and watched it, and realized, oh, that makes much more sense. But just wasn't enough to tag me. So I approached him that following Monday because he wanted to hear what I thought of the show. I told him, well, I saw Return of Harmony, and they no, you have to watch it from the very beginning. The very first episode. And it's the first episode. I would probably have to buy loads of have to buy it off iTunes or something, but I'm not a buyer of stuff online. Trying to be as preservative as much as possible, so I gave the show a pass. But again, it was also, I had other things going on in life. I mean, relatives moving, family stuff and all that. But also, again, I was busy with my own little high school review show. So I did not pay much attention to it. But it didn't stop there. It didn't stop right there, where I just passed the show. We enter Act 2, practically December of that same year, 2011. And randomly at that point, the fall-winter season at that time, for whatever reason, I was watching the local news. So I'd watch one news station at this time and then watched another station, another. Then this one time in December, one of my local news stations did this article on bronies and interviewed a few people about it, and taking a look at it, it left me weirded out, let's say. But there was just something bizarre about it. I mean, after that article was finished, I just turned off the TV and just thought to myself, is this real? Is this fantasy? Is this not turning into a reference to Bohemian Rhapsody? Practically, I was left shocked, confused, questioning reality. Is this really a real thing? If there is something online that says that it's true, and even the local news no less, then it's true. But it really didn't stop there. I mean, after the article and thinking about the mystery of this male following of this show made for young females, I kind of vowed that I'd never look at the show nor the franchise or anything of it whatsoever online. Ever. Even if I'm on the verge of my own deathbed, I wouldn't see it. Oh, little would I know at that point, didn't last long. We enter the final act, Act 3. So, we enter May 2012. Around the 2012 year, I practically was just getting a little bit better in high school, like, sort of trying to be on top of what my assignments were and all that, because a little bit I was a slacker in some classes. But, again, it was still the same way in high school. Go to classes, had this guy that was a grade ahead of me, both him and I were friends since middle school. Had this table, this time we were inside because the outside was a little messy, and sometimes it'd rain or it'd be so windy that we didn't want our food slamming onto other people and us getting into fights. So we had our own little table in the corner of the cafeteria, sat there, and few people started sitting around it. Now, this one guy, I'm not gonna name names, basically had a lot of MOP stuff on him. He had, like, little, like, keychain things or whatever that he had on his, I'd say, school bag, which had vinyl scratch, or as noted in the show as DJ Pwnefree. Essentially, he had a few pony stuff on him, and we did not make fun of him. I mean, we were just like, you like what you like, we accept it. We won't make fun of you for it. And pretty much that's how it was. I mean, sometimes we would have the chats with him at the cafeteria table, but again, we had our own ways. We watched what we watched, liked what we liked. We weren't biased. However, that's when the curiosity peaked. Around the end of Memorial Day weekend, or at least I should say the beginning of it, I was at home. I had finished the first season of my show, waiting on the school year to end and everything, and I decided to turn on YouTube and see what's going on. As I enter their website, randomly, for whatever reason, on their suggestion feed, and I don't know why, but there was a recommended video of a video called, and I'm willing to bet not a lot of you have heard about this one, but this video was called Ballad of the Brony, made by Saberspark. Now, at that point, I was a little shocked. I was a bit surprised, because sometimes, like, YouTube, like, their recommendations can be a little bit questionable, let's say. But with it recommending that I see this video, this Ballad of the Brony, I was confused. I was like, why did this site recommend me that I take a look at this pony video? Why did it recommend me this? I didn't watch anything MOP related to take a look. But that's kind of where the story sets itself up. Essentially, I thought for a while about seeing this show, this friendship is magic thing. This video is just staring me at my screen, almost begging me to, like, see what this is, at least in my mind. But looking at it, I just think to myself, I guess I am a little bit curious about this. Click on the video, it begins, and 1 hour later, pretty much after the video's finished, I'm like, okay, so this is an intriguing fandom, interesting origin, some shows that I'm quite familiar with that I didn't realize actually had Lauren Faust's name on it, but it looked like a show. It felt like it. I mean, there's loads of creative material, the arts, the videos, the music. It looked cool. But this would be the big turning point, the big one where I decide, would I go and watch this show from the very beginning? Would this be the turning point of my life? Because if I looked at these Pony episodes and became a part of this fandom, there was no going back. And the answer to that, in watching the Pony stuff, was yes, go for it. And probably it took me like 2 weeks to get through all 2 of the seasons that have aired. Now, I watched the entirety of it online because this was way back when the episodes of MOP were up on YouTube without any copyright issues. So that happened. And kinda like went back to high school, approached my friend during, I'd say, either the morning thing before class began or during lunch, but it's been years since that happened. But anyways, approached him and was like, man, this show, he was like, you saw it too? And both of us were surprised, and kinda we just were like, this show is good. It's great. It's really great. Flash is kind of iffy, but at least the animation, at least the characters, the dialogue, the songs, the life lessons, it works. It's really good. And just both him and I just had this sort of fun discussion, and even, again, the guy that was at our table that was a Pony fan before us, we kind of just opened up arms in friendship saying, we're into the Ponies now. Congrats. And pretty much that's how I got into Ponies, which the timing was almost perfect with that great ahead friend. So let's jump back into the story. Like other relatives, I mean, I pretty much covered, just at least off the top of my mind, how I became a part of this fan, at least started watching the show and consider myself a Brony. But fully, like, my involvement in the fandom probably wouldn't begin till, like, I'd say 2013, 2014, or something like that. But this was where pretty much how my life would spiral. When I told my parents that I was into MOP, I thought like they were going to question why, but they were calm. They were like, "Hi, you like the Ponies? We'll accept." It's pretty simple as that. I mean, it wasn't a long story or anything. They were just accepting of it. Other relatives, like my grandmother, my cousins, my great-grandmother, like all them, they were all accepting of my love of MLP. I mean, there's like, I don't remember where they are, but somebody at my birthday basically made me like a bunch of like little bottle caps buttons that had like the cutie marks of the main six, and like they were charming, and I even had them on my school bag, albeit hidden somewhere, but it was there. But this also meant, like, how will some of the teachers or students feel that I'm into this show? I mean, high school, it was already a tricky thing because you know how sometimes, like, people who grow up in, like, school they just want to be a man or be a woman or something like that and ignore all those, like, childish things, like how in elementary school they used to like A show, but now they're into B. Pretty much that's what it's like. I mean, I know it firsthand because like middle school, like that's when the nostalgia would try and sneak up on you, but people are just like, no, get into this, man. Avoid your childhood. Stuff like that. When it came down to my final 2 years, junior and senior year, pretty much it sort of became like this. When I like got into MLP, pretty much the students of my decision management class along with the teacher knew, at least that following year after I became an MLP fan, that they knew that I was into the show. I mean, I was bringing up like how the show I was watching covered that subject. I'd mention like key points of the episodes in the class, and they'd be like, "You're really onto that, aren't you?" They weren't hateful. None of them picked on me or anything. They all respected the opinion. And pretty much, like, senior year, I mean, other than the junior year, I mean, I just had like 2 or 3 students that are like, you into MLP? That's cool. The senior year, like, broadcasting class, we had this project. We had to do some sort of, like, thing that involved the title I Ams or something like that. I forget what it was, but for it, I decided to make this sort of documentary-like for it, and flat out, I'm not gonna lie, for this project, this was like, I think like a couple of weeks to the end of the year. I know it was like the same weekend or whatever I went to see Winter Soldier in theaters, but anyways, pretty much I approached the classroom with this thing, this I am, but I put the words a Brony in it and made it look all documentary-like with shots of the Space Needle and everything, keeping my sort of body hidden somewhere. And handed that video in, showed it in class, and the teacher, and I'm not kidding when I say this, gave me an A. Flat out A, and she was just applauding, appreciating just how much she liked that video. But that's kind of where all that ends, that high school years of becoming a brony, that impact and everything. But this is where we enter my involvement in the fandom. With it, I've kind of been on and off of the involvement for the most part, but it's really like, what kind of content could you make that has not been seen before in the likes of Friendship is Magic? I mean, if you've seen my Sopranos MLP video, I mean, that's another example of basically one source material that I know of that I feel like no other person in the MLP fandom has ever discussed about. But I'd say I've had moderate contributions. I mean, pretty much since, like, 2015, like, when I met Red Card for the first time in real life, that's practically the turning point when I decided to do convention vlogs, cover the convention floors for anyone that didn't go to that year's Everfree. That pretty much became my thing, my little own series, if you like to take that into account. But anyways, I mean, there's been a few PMVs that I've submitted, a couple of comments I've left, and a few EQD posts. But other than that, not much of a contributor to the world of Equestria Daily. But the Everfree Northwest stuff, that was my thing. But my involvement wouldn't be with more the fandom of EQD. Some of it would also be on the YouTube side. But the big ones were my social skills, like involvement in this group, this Seattle Bronies, as I saw in the King 5 article way back when, which my first ever meetup with them was with the Equestria Girls screening in Seattle. Now this theater, this small little, like, duplex theater, it had, like, 2 screens playing Equestria Girls on one area and then some, like, new movie on the other. They picked up the rights to play the first Equestria Girls movie. Now, at that time, I knew about the Seattle Bronies. I knew the group. I've pretty much became a part of it on their Facebook page. The meetup I was interested in, but it was a matter of convincing the parents to let me go to them. Pretty much 2013, in my knowledge, was the year of the meetups, because it's like every other 3 months or whatever I would go to these things. I mean, there was the introductory to the card game, there was the regular parties, making the foam wings for, like, the children's hospitals. Like, felt like generosity right there. But again, the big one was the Equestria Girls screening, the first meetup. And pretty much that's kind of where I got some of my introduction of the members of that group. Kind of how I met some people there. Though I feel like the only one at that time, at least on the top of my mind, I could recognize was really SR, because I think he was in the Extremely Unexpected Fans documentary, the one John Delancey hosted. I think, I mean, it's been years since I've ever seen that one, but you kind of sort of get the idea, is that I recognize this guy from the documentary, he was at this, and I'm like, pretty much I was like a nervous person. I was like, are you SR? And he was like, yeah, what up? And sort of just spiraled from there. We got into a chat, talked about a lot of stuff. I mean, even the seat I picked out, at least I bought online, was actually close to him. Saw the screen, I mean, watched the film, heard the reactions of the MLP fans as I was watching the movie, because you haven't looked at my shelf, I'm a big movie buff. Pretty much I got into MLP. I mean, at least the group, that is, the screening. Like, hearing all the laughter, all of the hilarity and everything that people had with the first Equestria Girls movie. Pretty much, it blew my mind. I mean, I think that portion would also become a bit of a staple. into who I would be down the line in terms of liking this show and the social cues that I would get to know. And as I attend more and more of these meetups, I recognize more people. I chat with them, friend them on Facebook, all that you are. I've also made friends online, but I will figure I'll hold this off for another video. I mean, this one, if you wait like a few seconds or whatever, that next part will be up. But for the moment being, I'm calling it here, because this is going to be a long video, I almost can surely tell you. But if you'll just give it a minute or whatever, then I'll have part 2 up almost immediately. So I'll see you guys later.